Good morning, Creekside Youth. Colleen here. I am coming at you this morning with my Harry Potter jammies on and my Bible open and my warm cup of coffee, sitting here chatting with y'all, and also hiding a little bit from my adorably extra toddler who would want to come in here and wreck this video. So that's where I am. Know that I miss you guys. I miss y'all so much. I miss playing games with y'all. I miss seeing your faces. I miss hugging y'all. I'm used to seeing y'all 2 times a week. So know that the missing over here on my end is really great. Last week, John Pray kicked us off in John chapter 9. And where we're going to camp out today for this lesson is the middle chunk of chapter 9. So I really recommend, if you haven't watched John Pray's mini sermon, if you're in IGTV, I think over here on this side, there's an X. Possibly it's over here. But click on that X. Get out of this little mini sermon with me. Go watch John Pray's, because he's going to chat about this miracle that Jesus performs of healing the blind man. So go listen to that, and then come back here, and we're going to chat about what happens after what happens to this man after the miracle is performed. So go do that, and then come back here. We have 10 minutes together today, which super secret. I have recorded this several times, and I keep going over by a lot. So hopefully this is the time that works. All right, open your Bibles. John chapter 9. To summarize super quick, John's lesson from last week. The disciples asked Jesus a question. They saw this blind man and they said, "Hey, Jesus, this blind man, why is there such a bad thing as being blind? Did he sin? Did his parents sin? Why is there such a thing?" And Jesus responds and he said, "It's neither of those things." He said, "It's so that the works of God might be displayed in him." And so that is exactly where we pick up with the works being displayed in this man, because word is getting around that this miracle was performed and that this man who was born blind can now see. His neighbors know, the people around him know, and so what these people do is they're like, "Hey, well, we need to bring this guy before the Pharisees because there was this miracle performed, and now our leaders need to know about this." And so that's where we pick up in chapter 13. It says, "They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, 'He,' meaning Jesus, 'put mud on my eyes. I washed, and I see.' Some of the Pharisees said, 'This man,' meaning Jesus, 'is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath.' But others said, 'Well, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs?' And there was a great division among them." All right, let's pause there. The Pharisees are like, "Hey, dude, you can see now. Explain this miracle to us." And I love the blind man's response, or the formerly blind man's response. He says, it's just so simple what he says. "Jesus put mud on my eyes, I washed, and I see." It's the 12 words. That's it. That's all he says. This is his beautifully simple testimony of what Jesus did that changed his life. And the Pharisees, all they hear is they hear this man and they're like, "Wait, what? Wait, he made mud? Jesus made mud? We've got him now." Because what they're hearing is that Jesus worked on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day of rest, and it's a day where there's supposed to be no work. So religious leaders during this time, they had to define, I guess, what work was. And so they interpreted this as, not working into all these different things that you couldn't do. Some of these things were like, you can't knead, which means you can't mix anything. You can't heal. You can't heal on the Sabbath. I think there were like some exceptions of if you absolutely had to save a life, but if it wasn't to save a life, like that person had to wait until the next day. And there were tons of other things that they couldn't do on these days. And the Jewish people were legit about keeping the Sabbath. And it was a serious offense if you didn't mind their interpretation of this law. It resulted in punishment. Sometimes you just would be kicked out of the synagogue, sometimes even death. So when I say that they were really serious about this, they were really serious. Here the Pharisees hear this man's the explanation of the miracle, and they're like, "Oh, dang! Did you pick that up? Jesus made mud. Dang, we got him." And so they say, "He is not from God." But the people that were there, they were really questioning this. They're like, "Well, how can a man that is a sinner do such a sign?" And so this division came up among the people that were there. The Pharisees, clearly not happy with how this is going, they turn to the blind man and they're going to ask him to further explain. And I think that they're doing so because they want some more proof, or they want some explanation that they can discredit Jesus. So we pick up in verse 17. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him?" Meaning Jesus. "Since he has opened your eyes." And the blind man says, "He is a prophet." Okay, I love this blind man. He is like direct, he is to the point, and he says it the way that it is. The fact that he chooses the word prophet to describe Jesus is because it's the highest station that he can think of. He knows that this man Jesus is not an ordinary man, and what he did absolutely comes from God, and so that's why he calls him a prophet. The Pharisees, dude, they're like not happy about this response. So in verse 18, they say, "The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight." So here they are. They don't even believe that he was ever blind. They're like, "Nope, go get your parents and let's confirm with them that you are actually you and that you were actually blind." And so it says here, that they did not believe that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of this man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." So they ask this blind man, they ask him, explain to us how this even happened. And so he does. He says in his 12 little words, "He put mud on my eyes. I washed them and I see." And they're like, whoa, he worked? Dang, we got Jesus now. And then this argument comes up between the people and the Pharisees. And so then they turn back to the blind man again, hoping for more ammunition to discredit Jesus. And the blind man is like, "He is a prophet. Like, that's who he is." And he's so confident in who Jesus is at this point. And the Pharisees are like, well, we actually don't even believe that you were even blind. So we need more proof. And here they are hoping for more ammunition to discredit Jesus. And they refer to his parents, and his parents are like, "Ugh." They're so terrified of being put out of the synagogue, of being punished by these Pharisees, that they kind of skirt around the truth. They say, yeah, this is our son. Yeah, he was born blind, but we don't really know these other things. So you need to go ask him. And so even though they clearly know that a miracle has been performed, they are too fearful to say that it was this man Jesus. They fear what others think, and therefore don't commit to they don't commit to the truth of what happened. I'm going over again. To summarize, when we encounter Jesus, when we meet Jesus, he changes us. And when you believe and when he changes your heart, you know that your heart was changed. Just like this man, he knows that he couldn't see before, and now he can. And for us, it's super similar. Blindness is a spiritual metaphor for being spiritually blind, for not being able to discern or hear God. And so, for us, like, we know when that change happened. And we all are a witness to the miracle of what Jesus does in a heart that is changed. And so, the power of a testimony, the power of a life that is changed, the power of a miracle that has been performed, like, it changes us and it changes other people. And so I hope that you are inspired this morning by this blind man and his confidence in the things that Jesus has done for him, and his claim on who Jesus is, and that we today have this same claim. Like, I know that Jesus rescued my family. I know it. I know that that's what happened in my life. And I know the exact moment that Jesus spoke to my heart and changed it forever. I know exactly where I was sitting. I know exactly when that happened, because I know when Jesus changed me. And because of that, I have this confidence and this boldness in knowing what I know. So I have some follow-up questions for you guys, as well as my worship psalm recommendations. I totally went over. I've really tried to keep this short, but look down below for some follow-up questions and my worship song recommendations. I sure do love y'all.